Welcome to Truthful Crime Case, where we uncover the unsettling truths behind some of the most notorious crimes in recent history. In today's episode, we're diving into the case of Tom Prinsley, a well-known school principal from Lexington, Kentucky, who was tragically murdered in April 2017. What investigators uncovered was a shocking motive that's hard to believe. Tom Prinsley, a 52-year-old principal of Lexington Christian Academy, was highly regarded in his Kentucky community. The small private school, nestled in a wealthy suburban area, thrived under his leadership. Tom was known for his strong commitment to his job and the people around him. Fair, kind, and passionate about education, he was well loved by students, staff, and parents alike. Beyond his role at the school, Tom had a deep love for restoring old homes, which he didn't just consider a pastime, but a personal mission. Over the years, Tom had carefully restored many of the grand, old homes in Lexington, giving fresh life to the city's historic buildings. He was now married to his second wife, Olive Prinsley, after going through a difficult divorce from his first wife. His first wife had been involved in criminal activities, selling prescription drugs to other moms, which had brought shame and trouble to the family. Despite these challenges, Tom worked hard to move forward, focusing on raising his two children from the first marriage, Martin, 21, and Bree, 18. Tom's career achievements came with a price in his personal life. He was so focused on his work, often staying late at the school and working on restoration projects. His commitment to his job made him less present at home, which left Olive feeling ignored and unloved as a wife and mother. However, while Tom was consumed by his busy life, he failed to notice the trouble growing in his own home. Olive, feeling more lonely and frustrated by Tom's emotional absence, began an affair with his son, Martin. What started as a secret relationship quickly turned into a dangerous obsession, leading Olive into a destructive and troubling situation. In the days before his death in early April 2017, Tom's seemingly ideal life was on the brink of collapse, disrupting the calm of the suburban neighborhood he had worked so hard to become a part of. On the morning of April 5, 2017, the peaceful Lexington, Kentucky neighborhood was jolted by a disturbing find. Around 7:30 a.m., Bree Prinsley, Tom's 18-year-old daughter, came home after staying at a friend's house. Bree had stayed out late studying for an important exam at Henry Clay High School, where she was a senior, and had slept over at a friend's house to avoid the early morning drive. When she entered the living room of her family's historic home, she instantly felt that something was off. The room, typically immaculate, was now in chaos. A chair was tipped over, and papers were strewn across the floor. Then Bree saw the most terrifying sight of her life. Her father, Tom Prinsley, was lying unmoving on the floor near the fireplace. His head was covered in blood, and a heavy iron fireplace poker lay next to him, also bloodied. Bree's heart pounded as she stood frozen, unable to grasp the scene before her. After a few moments, she managed to pull out her phone and call 911, her hands shaking as she tried to explain the situation to the operator. The dispatcher, sensing Bree's fear, swiftly dispatched emergency services to the scene. When the first responders arrived, they found Bree outside the house, pale and trembling. She was in shock and struggled to speak clearly. The paramedics rushed inside but quickly discovered that Tom Prinsley was already dead. The scene showed signs of a struggle, and the bloodied fireplace poker revealed the violent way Tom had died. As Bree was carefully escorted into an ambulance for a medical checkup, the police started their investigation. The officers quickly realized they were facing more than a typical burglary gone wrong. The brutality of the attack and the way the crime scene was arranged raised immediate concerns. Bree's discovery of her father's body set off a complex and startling investigation that would soon reveal the hidden secrets of the Prinsley family. The Lexington Police Department arrived quickly at the Prinsley residence following Bree's urgent 911 call. Just after 8 a.m. On April 5, 2017, officers arrived at the grand historic home, situated among horse farms and tree-lined streets in the affluent neighborhood. The morning sun cast long shadows across the neatly kept lawns, but the calm exterior of the house contrasted sharply with the horror inside. Detective Frank Mullins, a veteran investigator with over 15 years of experience, led the team. Renowned for his sharp instincts and meticulous attention to detail, Mullins had encountered many crime scenes, but this one felt different. As Detective Mullins entered the living room, the sheer amount of blood was the first thing that struck her. Tom Prinsley's body lay near the fireplace, his head battered by the heavy iron poker that lay discarded beside him. The room was a mess, with overturned furniture and papers scattered everywhere. However, Mullins quickly noticed inconsistencies that suggested something was amiss. The scene looked like a failed robbery, with a missing laptop and scattered bills hinting at a potential motive. Yet, Mullins' experience told her that the scene seemed too contrived, almost as if it had been arranged. The front door showed no signs of forced entry, and valuable items like the antique clock on the mantel and the flat-screen TV remained untouched. It seemed as though the killer intended for the police to think it was a straightforward home invasion gone wrong. As the forensic team started their examination, Mullins instructed them to dust for fingerprints and look for any overlooked evidence amidst the apparent struggle. They used luminol to detect any blood that might have been cleaned, and indeed, traces were found leading from the living room to the bathroom, suggesting the killer had tried to wash away some of the evidence. The medical examiner arrived soon after and confirmed Mullins' suspicion Tom Princely had died from blunt force trauma to the head. The severity of the injuries indicated a high level of anger or desperation. Mullins realized that this wasn't the work of a random burglar, it was personal. As the investigation progressed, her suspicions only deepened. The crime scene was too meticulously arranged, and the savage nature of the attack suggested a deep personal motive. The detectives exchanged uneasy looks, recognizing that the investigation would be far from simple. The serene, affluent community of Lexington was on the brink of being shaken by revelations that would reveal the hidden darkness beneath its refined exterior. Detectives focused their attention on Olive Princely, Tom's 40-year-old second wife, as the primary suspect in his murder. Olive was a stay-at-home mother known for her refined appearance and social poise. She was frequently seen at local charity events and community gatherings in Lexington, Kentucky. Beneath Olive's polished exterior, she harbored deep insecurities and fears, especially concerning her past. Raised in a poor household with inconsistent access to food, Olive had once worked as an exotic dancer. She kept this part of her life hidden due to the strict and conservative values of her community. In Lexington, even the slightest hint of scandal could lead to harsh public backlash, including severe punishments like whippings for perceived immoral behavior. Olive's fear of her secret being revealed loomed large over her life. However, when Detective Frank Mullins first questioned her, Olive appeared as a distraught widow. Her voice shook as she described the events leading up to Tom's death. Olive stated that she had been upstairs, sleeping off a bottle of Cabernet, when the attack happened, and she only learned of the scene when she heard Bree's terrified screams. She insisted that she had no idea who could have committed such a crime, continually expressing her love for her husband and her shock at his brutal murder. Despite Olive's apparent sincerity, Detective Mullins couldn't shake the sense that something was amiss. Olive's account seemed slightly rehearsed, and her tears appeared too conveniently timed. When Mullins inquired about her relationship with Tom, Olive acknowledged that they had issues but maintained that they were working through them. She portrayed Tom as a distant husband, but insisted she had always been supportive, even during challenging times. As the police investigation progressed, they uncovered disturbing details about Olive's life. A review of her phone records revealed numerous calls and sexually explicit text messages exchanged with Tom's 21-year-old son, Martin. The messages were not just flirtatious but explicitly sexual, detailing their encounters in graphic terms, which raised suspicions about the nature of Olive and Martin's relationship. When confronted with this evidence, Olive's demeanor changed. She became defensive, claiming the messages were harmless and that she was merely trying to support Martin during a difficult time. However, the police remained skeptical. Olive's increasing resentment toward Tom and her inappropriate relationship with Martin offered a potential motive for the murder. As the investigation progressed, Olive's carefully maintained facade began to fall apart. The police started to see her not as a grieving widow, but as the prime suspect in Tom's murder. The more the police learned about Olive, the more they believed she was hiding something crucial to solving the case. Their focus then shifted to Martin Princely, Tom's 21-year-old son from his first marriage. Martin had recently returned home after being expelled from Arizona State University due to drunken behavior and making sexual threats toward female students. Despite his charm and good looks, which he inherited from his father, Martin had a troubled past, possibly influenced by his birth mother, a drug dealer. He struggled to find direction, flunking classes and gaining a reputation for trouble. His relationship with Tom was strained, as Tom frequently expressed disappointment in his son's lack of ambition and direction. When Detective Frank Mullins questioned Martin, he was arrogant and dismissive. He openly admitted that his relationship with his father was complicated but firmly denied any involvement in Tom's murder. Martin described his father as a strict, often distant man who wasn't shy about disciplining his children and had always prioritized work over family. Martin claimed that while Tom's death was tragic, it wasn't shocking given the pressure his father had been under, even suggesting it might have been a suicide. However, his attitude shifted when detectives mentioned his relationship with Olive. At first, Martin downplayed it, referring to Olive as his moo-moo-moo mommy and explaining that she had been supportive through his many rough times, acting as the only mother figure he had since his birth mother was in prison. As the questioning progressed, it became evident that the relationship was far from innocent. Martin eventually cracked and confessed that he and Olive had been involved in a sexual relationship for several months. He brushed it off as a casual fling, claiming he was in it for the free sex and insisting it wasn't a big deal. Despite Martin's dismissive attitude, the police saw his affair with Olive as a possible motive. If Tom had discovered their relationship, it could have sparked a confrontation, giving Martin a reason to want his father gone. However, Martin continued to insist he had no involvement in Tom's death, claiming the affair was merely a distraction from his otherwise aimless life. Detective Mullins observed Martin's lack of genuine emotion when talking about his father's death. His flippant attitude and refusal to acknowledge the seriousness of his actions raised even more suspicions. However, without concrete evidence directly tying him to the crime, the police were unable to make an arrest just yet. Martin remained a key person of interest, especially as the tension between him and Olive and the volatile nature of their secret affair came to light. The investigation into Tom's murder was far from over, and Martin's involvement grew murkier by the day. The next person the police turned to for questioning was Bree Prinsley, Tom's 18-year-old daughter and Martin's younger sister. Bree, who had been the one to discover her father's body, quickly shifted from shock to suspicion. She was convinced that Martin was involved in their father's death. Bree and Martin had never been particularly close, and their relationship had become even more strained in recent months. Bree was a sharp, independent young woman, just months away from graduating high school. She had plans to attend the University of Kentucky in the fall, where she intended to study psychology. Unlike her brother, Bree had always been focused and determined, with a clear vision for her future. When Detective Frank Mullins interviewed Bree, she found her to be articulate and composed, despite the recent trauma. Bree was firm in her belief that Martin was involved in their father's murder. She described how Martin had been behaving oddly in the weeks before Tom's death, frequently arguing with their father and spending more time at home than usual. Bree also noted the increasing tension between Tom and Olive, although she wasn't fully aware of the depth of their marital issues. Her suspicions extended beyond Martin. She was also concerned about Olive's behavior, mentioning that her stepmother had seemed unusually composed in the wake of the murder. Bree described how Olive had taken charge of the situation, calling the police and informing the neighbors before Bree had even fully grasped what had happened. To Bree, Olive's actions seemed overly calculated and rehearsed. As the investigation continued, Bree's own relationship with Olive began to be scrutinized as well. Olive had used her charm and manipulative tactics to control Bree, creating a complex and tangled situation. Despite being a victim, Bree found herself entangled in Olive's deceit. During her interviews with the police, it was revealed that Bree had been involved in a brief sexual affair with Olive. This relationship was part of Olive's broader strategy to manipulate those around her and maintain control before and after Tom's death. Bree's revelations painted a disturbing picture of the dynamics within the Prinsley household. The police began to consider the possibility that both Olive and Martin might have been involved in Tom's murder, potentially collaborating to eliminate him. Bree's testimony added significant complexity to the case, implying that the murder stemmed from a tangled web of family tensions and secret relationships. Although Bree had strong suspicions, she lacked concrete evidence to directly implicate Martin or Olive. Nonetheless, her observations provided the police with valuable leads, prompting them to investigate the lives of both Martin and Olive more thoroughly. The investigation was growing more complex, with Bree's testimony becoming a crucial piece of the puzzle. On the morning of April 18, 2017, the case took a significant turn. The weather in Lexington was unusually warm for early spring, featuring clear skies and a gentle breeze. Detective Frank Mullins was back at the Princely residence, carefully re-examining the living room for any overlooked evidence. The case had hit a standstill, with no solid links tying Olive, Martin, or Bree directly to the crime. Determined to uncover the missing piece, Mullins was preparing to wrap up for the day when she noticed something unusual about the fireplace. The mantel appeared dusted clean, except for a tiny, nearly imperceptible smear near the base. It was easily overlooked, but Mullins' sharp eye caught it. She promptly called in the forensic team for a closer examination. The forensic team carefully removed the fireplace poker, the identified murder weapon, and dusted the area for fingerprints. They discovered a partial, faint but discernible fingerprint on the underside of the poker, an oversight in the initial investigation. The fingerprint was sent to the lab for analysis, and within hours, a match was found. The fingerprint didn't match Tom's, Olive's, or Martin's. It belonged to Bree. The revelation sent shockwaves through the investigation team. Bree had been outspoken about her suspicions of Martin and Olive, but now the evidence pointed to her. This new development compelled the police to reassess Bree's role in the case. Could she have been more involved than she had previously admitted? Detective Mullins was cautious about jumping to conclusions. Bree's prints on the poker could have been left there innocently, given that she lived in the house and might have handled it at any time. However, the timing of the discovery was suspicious, prompting further scrutiny of her involvement. The presence of Bree's fingerprints on the murder weapon, especially in such an unusual spot, raised significant questions. Mullins' team decided to bring Bree in for another round of questioning, pressing her more intensively about her actions on the day of the murder. Bree continued to assert her innocence, claiming she had no involvement in her father's death. However, her story contained small inconsistencies, and the new evidence made it impossible to completely rule her out. As the investigation progressed, the police knew they needed more than just a partial fingerprint to build a solid case. Yet, the discovery had significantly advanced the investigation. With Bree now under heightened scrutiny, the detectives were more determined than ever to uncover the truth behind Tom Princely's murder. On April 19, 2017, the investigation into Tom Princely's murder took a crucial turn. With Bree's fingerprints on the fireplace poker now a key piece of evidence, the police redirected their focus back to Olive Princely, Tom's wife. Despite this new development, Detective Frank Mullins remained unsettled by Olive's demeanor during questioning, which had always seemed off. Olive's overly calm and rehearsed demeanor, combined with the troubling relationship with Martin, continued to raise suspicions. The breakthrough came when police obtained Olive's phone records, revealing a series of deleted text messages between Olive and Martin in the days leading up to Tom's death. The recovered messages were flirtatious and suggested a more troubling relationship. One message from Olive, sent just 2 days before the murder, read, "Soon, it'll just be us, and we can finally be free." Martin's response was, "I can't wait." The messages revealed a clear motive. Olive wanted to be with Martin, and Tom was the obstacle standing in their way. The texts provided a compelling reason for Tom's murder. On April 20, 2017, a bright and sunny afternoon, Olive was brought into the Lexington Police Department for what would become her final interrogation. Faced with the damning evidence, the once composed and graceful Olive began to crack under pressure. Initially, Olive denied any involvement, but as the questioning grew more intense, she started to unravel. Detective Mullins pressed her on the inconsistencies in her story and the incriminating text messages. Olive's calm facade eventually shattered, and she began to cry. In a moment of desperation, Olive confessed, "I couldn't stand it anymore. Tom was suffocating me. I needed to be with Martin." Olive admitted to planning Tom's murder, staging it to look like a botched robbery, and even attempting to manipulate Bree into taking the fall by planting her fingerprints on the poker. With her confession, the police had all the evidence they needed to close the case. Olive Princely, 40, was arrested on the spot for the murder of her husband Tom. The news of her arrest shocked the community, particularly those close to the Princely family. Tom's children, Bree and Martin, were devastated. Martin, in particular, struggled to accept that his stepmother could be capable of such a heinous act, despite the overwhelming evidence. The case had come full circle, with justice finally within reach. Olive's arrest marked the end of a twisted love triangle that had devastated a family and shocked the community. Olive Princely's trial began on October 15, 2017, in Lexington, Kentucky. The case attracted significant media attention due to the shocking nature of the crime and Olive's previously flawless public image. The courtroom was crowded with reporters, curious locals, and Tom Princely's grieving family. The prosecution was led by District Attorney Helen Morgenstern, a 45-year-old attorney renowned for her dedication and persuasive arguments. In her opening statement, District Attorney Helen Morgenstern outlined Olive's motive, highlighting the affair between Olive and Tom's son Martin and Olive's desire to escape Tom's control. Morgenstern detailed Olive's meticulous planning of the murder, including staging the scene to resemble a botched robbery. She emphasized the chilling text messages between Olive and Martin, which revealed their intentions and desire to be together. Olive's defense attorney, Robert Hughes, a 52-year-old lawyer known for his calm and methodical approach, contended that Olive's confession had been coerced and that there was insufficient evidence to prove her guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Hughes portrayed Olive as a woman driven to extreme measures by an unhappy marriage and profound emotional turmoil. Hughes argued that Olive's confession was the result of intense police pressure and her distressed state of mind. As the trial unfolded, Tom's family watched with heavy hearts. Bree and Martin were visibly upset, grappling with the betrayal of their stepmother. Bree's face was frequently buried in her hands, while Martin seemed numb, still struggling to accept that someone he trusted could commit such a crime. On October 25, 2017, after several days of testimony and deliberations, the jury returned with their verdict. Olive Princely was found guilty of first-degree murder. The courtroom fell silent as Judge Richard Blake announced the sentence: life in prison without the possibility of parole. Reactions were mixed. Some felt it was a fitting punishment for Olive's crimes, while others believed it was too severe. Tom's family felt a sense of relief that justice had been served, though they remained deeply affected by their loss. The verdict marked the end of a tragic chapter for the Princely family, serving as a stark reminder of the devastating impact of unchecked desires and deceit. After Olive Princely's conviction, the lives of everyone involved were profoundly altered. The conclusion of the trial did not bring an easy resolution for those affected by Tom Princely's murder. Olive Princely was transferred to the Kentucky State Penitentiary, a maximum security facility known for housing dangerous criminals. Her once glamorous life had ended in stark and unglamorous circumstances. Olive faced the harsh realities of prison life, adjusting to its strict routines and regulations. She had lost everything she once held dear: her freedom, her marriage, and her reputation. Olive's case remained a topic of media interest, with newspapers and news stations closely following her transition from a respected community figure to a convicted murderer. Martin Princely struggled to cope with the fallout from the trial, burdened by the painful realization that his actions in relationship with Olive had played a part in the tragedy. At 21, he faced the added stigma of being associated with such a high-profile case. Martin sought counseling and focused on rebuilding his life, though the shadow of the scandal continued to follow him. Bree Princely, Tom's 18-year-old daughter, faced significant emotional and psychological challenges following the ordeal. Determined to honor her father's memory, she worked to ensure that the tragedy did not define her future. Bree chose to concentrate on her education and career, seeking peace through forward momentum. She found solace in sharing her experience, participating in local events, and discussions to raise awareness about domestic violence and familial betrayal. Her efforts highlighted how hidden grievances and complex relationships could lead to devastating consequences. As the months passed, the community began to heal, but the memory of Tom Princely and the repercussions of Olive's crime remained a poignant reminder of the darker aspects of human nature. A Truthful Crime Case Solvers. Interested in more real-life murder mysteries? Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. Do you have any thoughts about this case or have a case of your own you'd like us to investigate? Leave us a comment. Until then, stay safe.